Humans, when they fight, fight to win. Retreat is not even an option. The council's voice echoed through the dimly lit chamber of the Galactic Council. His deep-set eyes scanned the room, lingering on the other council members seated around him. The council chamber was no place for diplomacy today. Each species had sent their delegate, their best orator, to discuss the growing problem. They weren't just another species, they were a threat. Every species in the galaxy had encountered them, and none had emerged without bruises. The discussions had been going on for hours, but now it was time to hear from one who had survived an encounter. General Kordak of the Arkham sat back, letting the weight of his words sink in. His scaled fingers tapped the smooth stone of the council table, the rhythm like the beat of a war drum. They don't run, he repeated more to himself than to the others. His mind flashed back to that fateful day, watching from orbit as his fleet bombarded Earth's defenses. The humans, outnumbered and surrounded, should have retreated or surrendered. But no, they didn't. Not once. They saw every loss as a reason to hit back harder. Another delegate, one with a long segmented body, added with a low hiss dripping with anxiety, their counterattacks are swift, ruthless, and calculated. Kordak nodded, his dark eyes narrowing. You defeat one human squad, another replaces it, better equipped, faster. They learn faster than any species I've encountered. An insectoid delegate, arms folded, clicked its mandibles. Their biology is a weakness, short-lived, fragile bodies. They can't possibly stand up to prolonged engagements. Kordak shot a glare across the room, his patience thinning. Is that what you think? Tell that to my fleet, which no longer exists. The chamber fell silent, his words had weight the council couldn't ignore. The growing human threat could not be overlooked any longer. The insectoid ambassador visibly shrank, leaning back in his seat. Kordak cleared his throat, leaning forward. Let me tell you about Earth. When we struck, we had everything in our favor, numbers, firepower, technology they hadn't seen. We dropped into their orbit like gods. They should have been crushed in weeks. What happened? Asked another delegate, leaning in. They happened, Kordak said, his eyes darkening. They adapted. Every engagement, every loss, they used it. He paused, letting the silence work its way into the minds of his audience. And then came the counteroffensive, Kordak continued. They hit us in orbit first, took out half our fleet before we realized what was happening. It was like they had been waiting for us to make the wrong move, and when we did, they acted. Finished, Slen said, his voice full of unease. Kordak's fingers tightened on the table, he could still remember the moment his command ship had been crippled. Humans had boarded it within minutes. They fought like creatures born in chaos, mastering the battlefield with a focus that rattled even the most seasoned Arkhami warriors. One of the larger delegates, hulking and muscular, sneered. You were defeated by primitives. Kordak's gaze snapped to him, cold and fierce. Primitives? They aren't primitive. They used what we thought were weaknesses against us, the cold, the radiation. They embraced it. He leaned in, voice low but intense. We don't fear many in this galaxy, but let me tell you this, humans fight in ways you cannot predict. The council chamber buzzed with murmurs as Kordak's words spread through the room like wildfire. It wasn't just the Arkhami that had tasted defeat at human hands, every species present had their own horror stories, small skirmishes that turned into disasters, strategic victories that vanished overnight. The room fell silent as Kordak rose from his seat, towering over the others. And here's the worst part, he said, his voice grim. They pushed into our space-seeking resources. We tried to make an example of them. Now the only example left is how quickly they turn the tide. Eyes flickered around the room, uncertainty settling in. Everyone had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying for it. War with humans isn't like war with anyone else, Kordak concluded. They don't negotiate. They don't stop. Once they set their sights on something, they take it. If you engage them, be ready for losses, because they'll hit back harder than you can imagine. Kordak sat back down, his point made. One of the delegates spoke up, his voice low but firm. We better figure that out, because they aren't going away. The next time we face them, we better be ready. The council chamber grew still. The decision before them was clear: ignore the human threat or prepare for a war like none they had ever known. Deep down, every species in the room understood one terrifying truth: humans never back down. The discussion had shifted after Kordak's grim warning. The council, a room filled with the most intelligent and strategic minds in the galaxy, was now burdened by the weight of impending conflict. The humans weren't an anomaly, they were a storm. And it wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about understanding, controlling, and maybe even outlasting this storm. Weeks turned into months as the council convened more frequently, each meeting marked by tension and urgency. The council members were now grappling with the reality of a unified front against an enemy that refused to yield. Kordak found himself attending late-night sessions, the conversations growing more heated as delegates presented their various strategies for dealing with the human threat. Each race brought their perspective, their understanding of combat and strategy molded by their own histories. The Ivory, known for their relentless aerial assaults, proposed a strategy of air superiority. If we can gain control of the skies above their territories, we can cripple their ability to launch ground operations, Admiral Torvik argued passionately. But Kordak countered, drawing on his own experiences. The humans won't simply sit back and let you bombard them from above. They will retaliate. They will use their technology to develop countermeasures. In contrast, the arachnids, with their multi-limbed prowess and hive mentality, insisted on overwhelming force through sheer numbers. We will send wave after wave, their ambassador boasted, his segmented body glistening in the dim light. They will be buried beneath our might. Kordak couldn't help but shake his head. Numbers alone won't win this war. Humans know how to exploit weaknesses, and they will turn our own strategy against us. The meetings dragged on, filled with moments of frustration and despair as each delegate sought to impose their tactics onto a growing problem. The more they talked, the more they seemed to drift away from the reality of the threat. Kordak felt the weight of their indecision pressing down on him. Every time he presented his experiences, the council seemed to listen, but their plans were filled with bravado rather than practicality. The humans were an existential threat, and the council was in denial. The more he engaged with them, the clearer it became: they were overestimating their own capabilities while underestimating their adversary. As Kordak stared into the holographic projection of human territories, he felt a wave of frustration rising within him. Each colored region represented a stronghold, a burgeoning colony that expanded by the day. The humans were not merely surviving, they were thriving. One evening, after a particularly exhausting session, Kordak stepped out of the chamber, seeking solace in the quiet of the corridors. His thoughts were turbulent, racing through the strategies and insights he had gathered. He needed to find a way to penetrate the council's complacency, to drive home the reality that they faced an enemy that was growing bolder and more capable with each passing day. As he wandered the halls, Kordak found himself drawn to a small observation deck that overlooked the stars. The sight of the galaxies sprawling before him reminded him of the stakes at hand. He leaned against the cool glass, staring into the void, and pondered what had brought them to this point. It was more than just warfare, it was about the essence of existence itself. Every species had its own drive, its own purpose. For the humans, it seemed, it was survival, evolution, and relentless pursuit. Suddenly, a soft voice interrupted his thoughts. "You look troubled, General." Kordak turned to see Kalgor standing beside him, his expression serious yet empathetic. "We're all troubled, aren't we?" Kordak replied, his voice low. "The council is too focused on old strategies and tactics. We need to adapt, not just react." Cal nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "You speak truth, Kordak. But how do we shift the paradigm? How do we convince them that the humans aren't merely a threat but a force that requires a complete rethinking of our approach?" Kordak's gaze returned to the stars, pondering Cal's question. Perhaps we need to show them. We must demonstrate that humanity is not a threat to be ignored or underestimated. If we continue down this path, it won't be long before we're facing them on our doorsteps. Cal's eyes lit up with understanding. You mean a demonstration of sorts? A training exercise or a simulated engagement? Kordak turned to him, appreciating the spark of inspiration. Yes. If we can mimic a real encounter, it might awaken them to the reality of the situation. We need to be able to put ourselves in their position, to understand their tactics, their strategies. A plan began to take shape in Kordak's mind. They could create a simulated battlefield, one that replicated human combat conditions. It would be a training exercise designed to push every delegate's limits, to expose their vulnerabilities, and to cultivate a sense of urgency within the council. Let's present it at the next meeting, Kordak said decisively. If we can get the council on board, we might just have a fighting chance. With renewed vigor, Kordak returned to the council chamber, the light of hope flickering amidst the tension. When he presented his idea to the council, reactions were mixed. Some were enthusiastic about the prospect of a practical exercise, while others hesitated, afraid to acknowledge the gravity of their situation. Fear is a weapon, Kordak reminded them. Let it guide us into understanding our enemy rather than paralyzing us. The debate continued for days, but slowly the tides began to shift. More delegates began to understand the need for direct action, and Kordak's vision of a simulated human encounter gained momentum. Weeks later, preparations were underway. Kordak watched as different species collaborated, sharing their unique combat styles and tactics to replicate a battlefield that would mimic human engagements. Engineers, strategists, and soldiers all worked tirelessly to ensure the exercise would be as realistic as possible. The council chamber, once filled with discussions of the human threat, transformed into a hive of activity focused on preparation. As the date of the exercise approached, Kordak felt a sense of urgency coursing through him. They were about to step into the shoes of their enemy, to face the challenges that humans had presented to the galaxy. If they were to survive, they needed to learn, adapt, and, most importantly, build unity against a common foe. Finally, the day arrived. Delegates from all corners of the galaxy gathered in the training arena, a vast expanse filled with holographic technology, mock equipment, and simulations that stretched as far as the eye could see. Kordak stood at the front, his heart racing with anticipation as he addressed the assembly. Today, we face our fears. Today, we learn what it means to fight against an enemy that will not relent. Let us not only simulate their tactics but embody their spirit. This is our opportunity to understand them in ways we never have before. With those words, the exercise began. Delegates split into teams, each representing different species, strategies, and combat styles. The simulations kicked into gear, replicating human environments, terrain, and even technology. Kordak found himself thrust into the chaos of battle, leading a diverse group of soldiers against a relentless wave of simulated human combatants. The sounds of battle echoed in the air, blaster fire, explosions, and the cries of those engaged in the fray. Kordak's heart raced as he navigated the battlefield, coordinating with his team, adapting to the ever-shifting dynamics of the fight. The simulated humans were cunning and relentless. Every move Kordak made was countered by an equal and opposite reaction from the human simulations. He fought with every ounce of his being, relying on the skills he had honed over years of combat experience. But the challenge of the exercise wasn't just physical, it was mental. He had to think like a human, anticipate their moves, and adapt strategies in real time. Hours passed, and the intensity of the exercise began to wear on everyone. Fatigue settled in, but Kordak pushed forward, determined to see it through. The council members were grappling with their limitations, struggling to adapt to the unpredictable nature of the simulated humans. It was a brutal lesson, a harsh awakening to the reality of the threat they faced. As the sun dipped below the horizon, signaling the end of the exercise, Kordak surveyed the battlefield, the remnants of the simulated conflict scattered across the ground. The delegates emerged from their experiences, their faces etched with exhaustion, but also a newfound understanding. The atmosphere in the training arena shifted from one of uncertainty to determination. Kordak gathered everyone together, his voice firm yet resonant. Today, we have learned an invaluable lesson. We cannot simply prepare for war with brute force, we must be strategic, adaptable, and, above all, united. The delegates nodded, their expressions shifting from disbelief to acknowledgement. They had faced the very threat that had once seemed abstract, and now they understood the stakes. The reality of the situation was now tangible, the urgency palpable. They were not just individuals representing their species, they were a coalition standing against a formidable foe. In the weeks that followed, the Council adopted a more cohesive strategy, melding their tactics into a unified front. Each species brought their strengths to the table, combining technology, strategy, and intelligence in ways they had never considered before. They learned from each other's experiences, using their encounters with humanity to strengthen their resolve. Kordak felt a sense of purpose amidst the chaos, his conviction solidifying. The Council was no longer a fractured assembly, it had evolved into a formidable alliance, determined to face the impending conflict with a new sense of purpose. Each meeting was now filled with collaboration, discussion, and strategy building. They shared stories of encounters with humans, lessons learned, and insights gained. Despite the gravity of their situation, Kordak found a glimmer of hope emerging from the darkness. They were coming together, not just as representatives of their races, but as defenders of the galaxy. As preparations for the inevitable conflict continued, Kordak and the other delegates shared training exercises, honing their skills and developing new strategies. They devised plans that incorporated everything they had learned about humans, their adaptability, their relentless pursuit, and their refusal to back down. Kordak spent long hours in the training arena, refining tactics and strategies with different species. The arachnids shared their knowledge of coordinated attacks, while the ivory brought their aerial expertise into play. Together, they practiced engagement scenarios, simulating various strategies to challenge their responses and hone their skills. But it wasn't just about training, it was about building trust. Kordak took time to connect with his fellow delegates on a personal level, sharing stories and understanding their histories. The more they learned about each other, the stronger their alliance became. They were no longer just representatives, they were comrades in arms, united by a common cause. As the months passed, tension mounted in the galaxy. The human presence was growing, their colonies expanding. Reports of skirmishes along borders reached the Council, each encounter more fierce than the last. Kordak felt the weight of time pressing down on him. The Council was preparing, but they needed to act before it was too late. Kordak stood before the assembly once more, his heart pounding with urgency. We cannot sit idly by. Every day we wait, we give humanity the chance to strengthen their foothold. We need to strike before they become too powerful. The delegates exchanged glances, the gravity of his words hanging in the air. There was a fear of what was to come, but beneath that fear, there was a growing determination. They had learned the importance of unity, and now they needed to act on it. One delegate spoke up, their voice steady. If we combine our fleets, if we launch a coordinated strike against a key human stronghold, we may be able to disrupt their momentum. Kordak felt a surge of hope. Yes. We can hit them where they least expect it, cripple their supply lines, and force them to reconsider their expansion. The Council members rallied around the plan, their voices growing stronger as they strategized the details of the operation. They were no longer just disparate species, they were a coalition, determined to take the fight to the humans. With each passing day, the preparations intensified. The combined fleets were assembled, a multitude of ships from various species ready to strike. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of excitement and anxiety as they prepared to embark on their mission. Kordak stood at the helm of his flagship, surveying the fleet as it gathered around him. As they entered human territory, the tension in the air thickened. Every ship was on high alert, ready for whatever the humans might throw at them. Kordak felt his heart race, adrenaline coursing through him as they approached their target. The plan was simple yet audacious: strike a key supply base on the outskirts of a growing human settlement, disrupting their operations and sending a clear message. But as they neared the target, Kordak's instincts flared. Something felt off. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," he barked, eyes scanning the surrounding space. The crew responded with practiced precision, but it was too late. A volley of laser fire erupted from hidden human ships, their ambush striking without warning. Kordak's flagship rocked violently as the ship shook under the barrage. "Return fire," he commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos. The battle erupted in a cacophony of sounds, ships engaging in a dance of destruction amidst the stars. Kordak fought fiercely, directing his crew and responding to the relentless assault. But the humans were ready. They had anticipated their strike, fortifying their defenses and setting a trap. As Kordak maneuvered through the chaos, he realized the humans were fighting back with a ferocity that matched their own. They used tactics they had only just learned about, adapting in real time and exploiting every opening. As Kordak's flagship took damage, he fought to maintain control, directing his ship and rallying his forces. "Push forward. We cannot yield," he shouted, determination etched on his face. But the tide of battle began to shift. The humans were relentless, pressing forward with every advantage they had. Kordak's heart sank as he watched their ships falling one by one, the coalition forces struggling to maintain cohesion. The battlefield was a maelstrom of chaos, and it became clear that they had underestimated their enemy once again. In the midst of the turmoil, Kordak felt a surge of frustration. They had trained, prepared, and united, but here they were, caught in a trap of their own making. The realization struck him with brutal clarity: humanity had evolved beyond mere survival. They were a force to be reckoned with. But even in the face of overwhelming odds, Kordak refused to back down. He rallied his forces, fighting with every ounce of strength he had left. They would not go quietly into defeat, they would fight until the last. As the battle raged on, Kordak found himself in a personal duel with a human commander. The two engaged in a fierce confrontation, each displaying their skills and determination. It was a clash of wills, a battle that symbolized the broader conflict unfolding around them. But just as victory seemed within reach, disaster struck. Kordak's flagship was critically damaged, and the crew was forced to abandon ship. The sense of despair washed over him as he witnessed his forces crumble under the relentless assault. As he drifted through space, Kordak felt the weight of their failure. The coalition had faltered, and the humans had proven their resilience once again. They had fought fiercely, but the cost was too great. In the aftermath of the battle, the surviving delegates gathered in the council chamber, the atmosphere heavy with defeat. Kordak stood before them, the weight of their losses pressing down on him. "We underestimated them," he admitted, his voice low. "But we must not lose hope. We must learn from this. We must adapt." The council members nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. The lessons of the battle were painful but necessary. They had witnessed the reality of the human threat, and now it was time to rise from the ashes. Days turned into weeks as the council regrouped, analyzing their failures and adjusting their strategies. They sought to understand the nuances of human tactics, delving into intelligence reports and debriefings. Kordak took it upon himself to lead the charge, immersing himself in every detail, determined to find a way to turn the tide. It was during these discussions that Kordak found an unexpected ally. a young human strategist, captured during the skirmish, had been brought before the council. Initially viewed as a prisoner, he quickly became a pivotal figure in their understanding of human strategy. His insights were invaluable, shedding light on the human mentality, their tactics, and their unwavering resolve. "Humans fight differently than we do," he explained during one of their meetings. "You rely on brute strength and numbers. We rely on ingenuity, strategy, and adaptability." Kordak listened intently, recognizing the truth in his words. It was a stark contrast to their own approach, and one they needed to learn from. With the human strategist's help, the council began to refine their tactics. They explored unconventional strategies, incorporating elements of surprise, guerrilla warfare, and psychological tactics into their plans. The goal was not just to match the humans but to outsmart them. As preparations continued, Kordak felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were no longer simply reacting to the human threat, they were preparing to take the initiative. The council had evolved, embracing adaptability and innovation in their strategies. Weeks later, the council decided to launch a new offensive, one that was carefully planned and meticulously executed. Kordak took the lead once more, determined to reclaim the momentum they had lost. They would strike at a vulnerable human colony, using the element of surprise to their advantage. As they approached their target, Kordak felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The time for action had come. The coalition fleet was ready, each ship brimming with resolve. Kordak stood at the helm, surveying the stars ahead, ready to take the fight to the humans once again. The battle commenced with a calculated strike, the coalition forces launching a coordinated assault on the human colony. The humans, caught off guard, scrambled to respond, but this time the coalition had the advantage. Kordak felt a surge of adrenaline as they pressed the attack, the tides of battle shifting in their favor. But just as victory seemed assured, the humans began to adapt. They regrouped, implementing countermeasures that Kordak had anticipated but hoped wouldn't come to fruition. It was a relentless back and forth, the battlefield a chaotic ballet of strategy and combat. Kordak fought fiercely, commanding his troops with precision, but he knew this was just the beginning. They would need to remain vigilant, to anticipate every move the humans made. The conflict was far from over, it was evolving. Days turned into weeks, and the coalition forces pressed forward, engaging the humans in a series of battles that tested their resolve. Kordak felt the weight of leadership pressing down on him as he navigated the intricacies of strategy and the harsh realities of warfare. But amidst the chaos, there were moments of hope. The coalition began to work in harmony, their strategies evolving in real time as they learned from each engagement. Kordak found solace in the camaraderie that had developed among the various species. They were no longer just allies, they were friends, bonded by the shared goal of survival. However, with each victory came losses. Kordak watched as brave soldiers fell, their sacrifices weighing heavily on him. The toll of war was undeniable, and he felt the burden of leadership more than ever. The coalition had come together, but the reality of their mission was harsh, and the cost of victory was steep. Despite the setbacks, Kordak remained determined. He knew they had come too far to turn back. The council met regularly, analyzing each battle, refining their strategies, and sharing their knowledge. They explored new technologies, seeking any advantage they could find. As the conflict raged on, Kordak began to understand the true nature of humanity. They were not just an enemy, they were a force that demanded respect. Their ability to adapt and overcome was a reflection of their relentless pursuit of survival. In many ways, they mirrored the coalition's own struggle for existence. Finally, after countless skirmishes and battles, the coalition launched their most ambitious plan yet, a coordinated offensive to push deep into human territory and strike at the heart of their operations. It was a gamble, one that could either turn the tide of the war or lead to their ultimate demise. Finally, after countless skirmishes and battles, the coalition launched their most ambitious plan yet, a coordinated offensive to push deep into human territory and strike at the heart of their operations. It was a gamble, one that could either turn the tide of the war or lead to their ultimate demise. shoulders. The stakes had never been higher, and the pressure to succeed was immense. He gathered his fellow leaders, each representing their species, and shared his vision for the operation. As they prepared for the operation, Kordak felt the weight of responsibility heavy on his. "We must unite our strengths," Kordak urged. "This is not just a fight for survival, it's a fight for our future. We can no longer afford to underestimate the humans. They will fight with everything they have, just as we will." With a renewed sense of purpose, the coalition began to strategize. They developed a multi-pronged approach that combined their unique strengths into a cohesive plan. The arachnids would lead the ground assault, using their sheer numbers to overwhelm human defenses, while the ivory would provide air support, leveraging their aerial prowess. As the date of the operation approached, Kordak felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. They were on the brink of something monumental, but the uncertainty of war weighed heavily on him. Each delegate had invested their hopes and dreams into this mission, and failure was not an option. The day of the operation arrived. Kordak stood on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by the leaders of the coalition. They were ready to embark on a mission that would test their resolve and their unity. The fleet gathered around them, ships of various shapes and sizes, each representing a unique race united under a common cause. As they surged into human territory, Kordak felt the adrenaline coursing through him. The operation was underway. The coalition forces engaged with determination, pushing into the heart of human territory. The initial stages of the assault went according to plan, with their forces pushing forward, overwhelming human defenses. But as they pressed deeper, the tide began to shift. The humans regrouped, implementing countermeasures that had caught the coalition off guard. Kordak's heart raced as he watched their ships adapt, responding to the assault with a ferocity that matched their own. The battle raged on, and Kordak felt the familiar frustration rising within him. They had trained for this, prepared for it, yet the humans were relentless. They fought back with cunning and strategy, using every advantage at their disposal. Kordak fought fiercely, directing his forces, but he could feel the tide turning against them. The coalition was faltering under the pressure of the human response. Just when it seemed all hope was lost, he remembered the lessons they had learned: adapt, innovate, overcome. With a surge of determination, Kordak rallied his troops. "We will not yield. This is our fight, our future. Push forward." And with that, the coalition forces regrouped, adapting their tactics on the fly. They began to outmaneuver the humans, exploiting weaknesses, and striking where they least expected it. It was a dance of chaos and strategy, each side pushing the other to its limits. As the battle continued, Kordak felt the tide slowly shifting back in their favor. The coalition forces began to regain momentum, pushing deeper into human territory. They fought valiantly, their unity and determination shining through in the chaos of battle. Days passed, and the coalition pressed onward, engaging in fierce battles that tested their limits. Kordak fought alongside his comrades, each victory fueling their resolve. They had learned from their failures and adapted to the relentless human response. But victory came at a cost. Kordak witnessed the sacrifices made by his allies, the toll of war etched on their faces. The coalition emerged victorious from each engagement, but with each victory came losses. The reality of their mission weighed heavily on him, and he felt the burden of leadership pressing down. Finally, after weeks of grueling combat, they reached a critical juncture. The coalition had successfully pushed into the heart of human territory, disrupting their supply lines and communications. The humans were on the back foot, struggling to regroup. In a moment of clarity, Kordak realized the importance of the next steps. They had proven their strength, but they needed to solidify their victory. He gathered the council, each leader representing their species, and proposed a plan. "We have the opportunity to negotiate," Kordak urged. "Let us show the humans that we are not just a force to be reckoned with, but also a coalition that seeks peace. We must extend the olive branch." The council debated, the tension palpable. But Kordak's words resonated. They had fought fiercely, but now it was time to consider the future. A desire for peace began to surface, a yearning to forge a new path. In a historic move, the coalition reached out to the humans, seeking a ceasefire and an opportunity to negotiate. It was a gamble, but one they felt was necessary. They had faced the humans as adversaries, but now they sought to engage as allies. The humans, surprised but intrigued, agreed to a temporary ceasefire. Kordak stood at the negotiation table, flanked by the leaders of the coalition. They faced the human representatives, each side wary but hopeful. The discussions were tense, filled with moments of uncertainty and hesitation. Kordak spoke passionately about the need for understanding, for cooperation in a galaxy that had been torn apart by conflict. He shared stories of their struggles, their desire for peace, and the importance of coexistence. As the negotiations unfolded, it became clear that both sides had much to learn from one another. They shared their histories, their cultures, and their visions for the future. It was a fragile moment, one filled with the weight of possibility. After days of intense discussions, a breakthrough was reached. The coalition and the humans agreed to a treaty, one that would ensure mutual respect, cooperation, and the recognition of each other's sovereignty. As Kordak signed the treaty, he felt a sense of relief wash over him. They had fought hard for this moment, and now, amidst the ashes of war, there was hope. The galaxy had taken a significant step towards healing, towards unity. In the weeks that followed, the coalition and the humans began to build bridges, fostering relationships that had once seemed impossible. They shared resources, knowledge, and technology, learning from one another in ways that would reshape the future. Kordak stood at the forefront of this new era, his heart filled with hope. The coalition had not only survived the threat of humanity, they had emerged stronger, wiser, and united. Together, they had faced adversity and transformed it into opportunity. As the stars twinkled above, Kordak reflected on the journey they had undertaken. They had fought, learned, and adapted. They had faced their fears and embraced their humanity, recognizing the strength that came from unity. In this new chapter of their existence, Kordak knew that the galaxy held endless possibilities. Together, they would navigate the challenges ahead, forging a path toward a brighter future, one where cooperation and understanding triumphed over conflict. And with that, Kordak stepped forward, ready to embrace the future, hopeful for what lay ahead.